Welcome to the session. Hi, my name is Jane, and today we're going to explore Python turtle graphics and how you may be able to use this to introduce Python to your students. I'll also introduce how you can sign up for the free curriculum. We'll get started right away. Before diving in, let me introduce Kobe real quick. So we are an online PD and curriculum provider. And if you are thinking about switching from Scratch to a text-based programming tool, then I hope you can try us out. We may be a good option for that. Python has a huge collection of libraries that will let you do all sorts of things, and Turtle is one of them. So from creating games to working with AI, this is one of the reasons why Python is so popular. It's got a huge library and lets you do all sorts of things with simple syntax. And Turtle graphics, as you can see here, it's visual, and it's what existed before Scratch to introduce students how to code. So introducing Python Turtle to your students, it's a great way to introduce text-based programming language. So instead of dragging blocks, now they get to type and produce images. So if you're looking to go beyond Scratch, try out the Turtle. And what's great about it is that it gives you visual results, but it will also produce errors, unlike Scratch. Okay, you probably know this already, but just to go over the history real quick. In 1948, long ago, a neurologist, Gray Walter, created his first robot that looked like this. It's named Elmer, and it looks like a tortoise. It moves like a tortoise. And since then, these turtle or tortoise-like robots became popular as a tool to show younger kids the power of programming. 1969, Seymour Papert, Cynthia Solomon, a couple other people began experimenting the idea of using this tool for introducing programming in classrooms. And they took the idea further, and instead of using this clunky robot with, extension cord following it around, they thought, why not make this into a program, a software? And they created an educational language called Logo. And now, instead of using Logo, you can create your turtle using all sorts of languages. And today we'll be doing that using Python. So since then, Turtle graphics has become, it's become a timeless classic, loved by mathematicians, coders, and artists. Why Python Turtle graphics? There are, good reasons I explained a little bit in the beginning. So, it's a relatively painless way to introduce programming concepts. Also a great way to familiarize students with Python syntax. Second one, it's also a good way to have students develop logical thinking, computational thinking, and combine math knowledge, especially geometry. And I'll show you why that is in just a bit. 3, the results are visual. So it helps students follow visually what their code is doing and makes it a little bit more interesting. 4, they also get to experience procedural abstraction. So those of you who know this, simply put, students learn to use libraries and modules created by others. So we're going to be using a lot of libraries. And 5, it's also a great opportunity to teach students how to find information they need from a formal documentation site. We're going to be doing just that. Programmers do this all the time, right? Instead of coding from, right from their head, they need to look things up because they're not going to create everything from scratch, right? There are documentations that are created for you so you can look it up and use the already existing libraries. So it's a very useful skill. It will definitely take your students beyond what's required if they know how to use these libraries. And they will also be able to explain their code when they're doing this. Okay. So when is the best time to introduce Python Turtle? Well, anytime's a good time. But it's a great first programming language for them. So perhaps right after they're, graduating Scratch would be a good time. All right, so now we're going to dive right in. And to do that, we're going to need an editor. So if you already have an editor, Python editor, great. If you don't, I'm going to share a link with you where you can jump in and start coding right away. And you don't need to install anything. All you have to do is go to this link. I'm also going to show you a way you can sign up and do this with me together. And where you do that is at this URL, and I'll also give you that. And the reason why I'm showing you two ways is because once you sign up, you get to save all your progress. With the link that I gave you in the chat window, that one, if you close the window, it won't save. So in case you want to save and also have, full access to Kobe, this is the way to do it. And let me show you how that's done. All right, so once you're in, you can now go to the project area. So on the left side, you'll have these different options: home, gradebook, project, content, resources. And from those, let's click on project. And let me make my screen a little bit bigger. And from here, you can create as many projects as you want. So click on create project. And then you have to select what language you want to use for this project. So for this one today, we're going to select Python Turtle, which is right here. So there are, Python, Python Visual, skip those, and let's select Python Turtle. And project name, I'll just put Turtle Practice. You can always come back and change this. And description, same thing. Show code. So if you want to share your project with other people and show your code, or hide your code and just, show the output itself, then just turn this off. You can also change the settings later on, and I'll make this public access in case I need to share this with you. All right, so I'm now going to save. Let me know if I'm going a little too fast. If you are not here yet and you're on the link that I just shared with you, that's fine, which looks like this. And after I save, I'm going to be seeing something similar that I just created. So I'm going to save now. And here it is. So here is my Turtle editor. And we already have a line of code here for us. And I'm just going to remove it. Okay, so now let me explain the editor real quick. So on the left side, you have your files. You can create as many files as you'd like. Upload images, text files, whatever you need. That's going to be handled on the left side of this screen. So the left panel. Center is where you type and start coding. And on the right side, we have two output windows. So one on the top is your Turtle output, excuse me. And the one at the bottom is your console. This is your, let's say, a terminal. So this is where your regular Python will be showing up. And your Turtle Python is going to be showing up on the top. And we'll see that in just a second. And if you feel like your output window here at the bottom is getting a little bit messy, just click on this trash can icon and it'll clear out the screen for you. And yep, so no more mess after this. And if you, want to change your title, the gear icon on the top, click on it and it'll give you options so you can go back and change it. And you can copy this link and share it with anybody who needs to see it. Okay, so let's now start coding. Those of you who are already familiar with programming, this is going to be a breeze for you. So let's do this. And of course, the first thing we're going to do is, can you guess what it is? it's printing hello world. So this is what programmers do when they first begin their program, right? So we're going to just print. And let me make the screen a little bit bigger in case it's hard to see. Okay. And that print, it's going to let you output things to the console window. And in order to print, we're going to need parentheses after the command. Inside the parentheses, we're going to have double quotes because we're going to output just regular text. And in order to do that, we need to surround it with double quotes. Single quotes also work. So here it is, print. And once you type in one single double quote, it's going to automatically create that closing pair for you. And now inside it, we're going to insert hello world or anything else you'd like. But this is, what all programmers do when they begin. And guess what we're going to do next? We're going to print. So very simple. It's going to show up on this dark area of the panel. And let's click run to see it. Here it is. Hello world. Very simple, right? So this is your output, your print command. And if you want to print anything else, just make sure to insert it between the double quotes. So you can also put your name here. Jane, are you? And run. And here it is on the right console window. So this is your print statement. We haven't yet used our turtle yet. And we're going to do that right after this. One thing I forgot to mention is that we're going to go through 8 challenges today. This was your first one. That was a breeze, right? The second challenge that we're going to do is we're going to receive an input from the user and use that input to say something back. So for example, we can ask for the user's name. And when the user says their name, we're going to use that and then say, hello name. So I'm going to say, what's your name? That's going to be the output that we're going to give. And the user will input Jane. And then my output after that will be hello Jane. And in order to do this, we need to learn about input command. Very easy to work with. And for doing this, we're going to use variables. Okay, so feel free to delete your first line if you want to. You can keep it there if you like, but I'll just remove it for the simplicity. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a variable that is going to receive the user's input and store it so we can later use that. And you can give this variable any name you want. And for this one, because we're going to store a name, I'm just going to call this variable a name. And then we're going to assign it, give it a value, right? So to do that, we need an equal sign. And one thing we could do here is we could hard code a value in here. So for example, I can just say, hey, Jane. And then, this name variable now has the value Jane assigned to it with that equal sign. And I can just simply say print name. And it's going to print Jane for me. Let me clear out the window, show you what happens. There we go, right? So I just created a variable, printed that out to the output window, but this isn't what we want. We want to get somebody's input and use that to respond, right? So this is what we're going to do. We're going to modify this the code. And instead of hard coding in Jane, we're going to tell it, get the user input. And that command is simply input, parentheses. Okay. And now one thing that's really neat about Python is that everything's simplified. If you were going to do this in Java, you'll probably have to write this in, 3-4 lines. But this, because it's Python, it'll let you do it in one single line. So in the parentheses, you get to insert your prompt. So whatever you want to ask the user to get that input, you can insert it in here. So I'm going to say, what's your name? What's your name? And whatever the user inputs, excuse me, it will get stored in the variable name. And we get to print that out now. So let's try it out. Let me clear the screen. Run. What's your name, right? And the cursor is blinking, waiting for my response. So I'm going to type in Jane. Enter. And now next you see that it has printed Jane to the console. Now, if I had inserted something else, it'll print that. Okay, so if you are here with me, great. If you need a little bit more time to explore, just put that in the chat window. Just any icon, alphabet, that'll be fine. And next up, what we're going to do is we are going to say hello name instead of just saying the name, right? So in order to do that, we're going to need to insert something in front of the name. And doing this in Python, very easy to do. And there's a neat trick. What we're going to do here is we're going to put the double quotes, insert hello, right? This is what we're going to attach in front of name. If we try to print this, it's going to throw an error. It won't know how to handle this because we're missing one thing, which is you can either put a plus sign to concatenate or put two things together, or in Python, you can just simply comma separate the different items in that print parentheses to output that to the console window. And this comma here is not only going to put things in order, right, and print that, it's also going to automatically insert a space. So it'll format this for you. Now let's try this time. Let me drag this window up a little bit to show this better. Run. What's your name? Jane. Enter. It says, hello, Jane, back to the user. So this is how you would get a user input, store that as a variable, and use that variable to output something back to the user. So it's very useful. You can imagine, using this with your students to create all sorts of programs, right? Question and answer. So this means that you can create a quiz. You can create, choose your own adventure kind of stories. And this is the basic, right? Get the user input and respond to it. All right, so let me clear this. And now, challenge number 3, we are going to work with the turtle. And in order to do that, I'm going to show you a couple of resources. Now, different from Scratch, we don't get to see all the ready-made commands, right? We don't have that toolbox on the left side to sift through and, drag things out. We don't have that, but instead we have the Turtle Graphics library, which is right here. And I'm going to share with you this link, and we'll look this up very often. So make sure you have this in your next tab. Okay, so here it is in the webinar chat. This is your Python library, and you can easily Google this and get the link. And once you land here, there's lots of information, lots of text, right? Looks very busy, and it could be intimidating, but compared to other libraries, it's very friendly. You can easily read through it and understand. It's written for humans, and it has lots of examples, so you can just adopt it right away. All right, so let's take a quick look at this library. And as I mentioned in the very beginning, this kind of skill of, being able to look up information in documentation, it's going to take your students far, far beyond what's taught in the classroom. So very useful skill, especially, if your students are planning to become a coder, programmer, computer scientist, essential skill. Okay, so here it is. We're going to scroll down to where there is a list of all the commands. Scroll, scroll, scroll. And here they are. Under the heading Turtle Methods, you'll see a list of all the commands that you can use with Turtle. it's not a lot, actually. You can just scroll through and see that there's maybe, a little over 100, or it looks like it's even less than that. So, and you can just read through and you can probably figure out what these commands are for. So if it says forward, right? Maybe this moves my turtle forward, right? If you want to know how to use it, just click on it and it'll take you to the section. Excuse me. Backward, right? Probably takes my turtle backwards. Right, probably a right turn. Left, probably a left turn, and so on. So you have all these commands that you can use, and it's actually categorized, sort of like Scratch, right? So you have the move commands, the draw commands in this drawer. And you can also look up your turtle state, where it's located. And you can also control the pen. And, you can also make it interactive using events, which we're going to do later on, and so on. So you have all these things that you can click on and see and use. And let's take a look at the command forward, because we're going to use just that right now. Okay, so click on forward, and here we are. It tells you how to use it. So turtle.forward, and in the parentheses, you're going to put in your distance. So in this case, it's pixels. So if you put 100 pixels, your turtle will move forward 100 pixels. Very simple, right? And it also gives you examples of how to do that, right? Turtle.forward 25. You can guess what this does, right? Move your turtle 25 pixels forward. And you can also go minus the opposite direction, right? So very useful. Just, if you want to see how this works, just grab the whole thing and plop it in and see what happens. So we're going to do that right now. All right, let's go back to the editor and make sure you have that handy. And first line, we're going to insert, I'm going to delete everything here, is import. Now, Python is shipped with libraries. It's got tons of libraries shipped with it. You can use it right away. Some of them you'll have to import. For example, this turtle library, in order for you to use all the commands, you have to import it. So let's do that right now. That's going to be at the very top of your code so that it's imported, first thing. As soon as you load your program, it's going to import the turtle library. So all the commands are available for you. Import, and then lowercase turtle. And now this gives us access to all those commands that we just saw. Okay, I'm just going to skip a line. And here we're going to create the turtle. We're going to create the turtle object and give it a name. And that way we get to control that turtle by just using its name. So you can give this any name. I like to call it Pat. And of course, I'm going to use the equal sign to assign something to Pat, right? And that something is going to be turtle object. So we're going to create the object from the turtle library, right? The turtle library itself. So we're going to say turtle from the turtle library, create me a turtle object. And notice that the case is different, right? So the first one, because, it's the library itself, it's lowercase. The second one, because we're creating an object, we're going to capitalize, uppercase, that first letter, and then parentheses, followed by parentheses. Sometimes when you're creating objects, well, this is your usual syntax. You can insert things here in the parentheses, but for this one, we don't need that. So right now, what we just did was we created a turtle object and assigned that to Pat. Next thing, we're going to tell Pat to do things. So for example, the forward command that we just learned, right? Let's use that on Pat. So we're going to say, hey, Pat, and then followed by a dot operator. This is very important. So you can use dot to attach your command. And we're going to say, hey, Pat, move forward 100 pixels. And now let's run and see what happens. And let me just scoot this down a little bit. Oh, here it is. This looks nothing like a turtle, right? It's just an arrow with a line following it. And this is it. This is your basic turtle. So by default, it looks like an arrow to indicate the direction it's moving. And because it's moving forward 100 pixels and it's dragging a pen behind it, it's going to draw a line. So this is it. This is your turtle that has moved forward 100 pixels. And just to see this in action, let me run it one more time. Okay, so yep, it started from the center, moved towards the right, 100 pixels. So this was your challenge number 3. Okay, so pretty easy, right? We're going to keep building onto this code so you can keep all your 3 lines. And the next challenge I'm going to give you is we're going to draw a square. Okay, so we now know how to move forward 100. Now we have to figure out how to turn our turtle and then have it move another 100, turn it again, move another 100, turn it again, move another 100, right? So you keep repeating this and it's going to draw a square. And I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to figure this out on your own. And to help you get through this part a little bit faster, I'm going to share with you a resource that we created. It's a 1-page reference sheet where you can, it's got all the, the most popular turtle commands in it with examples. And I'm going to put that in the chat window. So feel free to go in there and download it, keep it handy. You can print this out for your students if you like. And this will give you all the popular commands, the most used commands with your turtle. And just to show you what it looks like. See, do I have one up here? Yeah. So here it is. This is your 1-pager, the link that I just shared with you in the chat window. This is your 1-pager. And as you can see, it gives you how to import your library, how to create your object, and how to move your turtle, and also controlling your pen, right? If you don't want to leave that line behind you, you can always lift it up using these commands and put it down. You can also control the thickness of that line and change the color and, draw shapes, fill that in. All that is here available for you. So this is your quick syntax sheet. And throughout today's challenge, all the commands that you need, it's actually all gathered here. So you don't necessarily have to jump into that the graphics library and see that. So this is something to help you out through this project. And let's go back here. And now, have you figured out how to draw your square? There's just one more command that you had to find out, right? Which is turn right or left. In any case, let's go ahead and code that in here. So I'm going to make the square a little bit smaller than 100 pixels. I'll just keep it to 50, half size. And next, I'm going to tell Pat to turn right. And if you're not quite sure how this right command works, feel free to look it up. And inside the parentheses, this time, instead of pixels, it's going to be degrees. So how many degrees do you want you to turn the turtle? So I'm going to say, well, 90 sounds good. So let's go ahead and test this out. 2 lines of code, right? Oh, there we go. So it moved forward 50 pixels. Now you can see the arrowhead pointing downwards. So that is turn right 90 degrees that we just saw. And if you want to draw a square, all you have to do is repeat this 4 times, right? So I'm just going to simply copy, paste, paste, and paste. Now that we have 4 sets of these forward and right, it'll draw a square. Let's see it in action. Run. There we go. Looking good. And here's our square. All right. So this is what I meant at the beginning by, a tool to help students understand geometry and actually see it in action. So, yep. a very good tool to use in your math class if you'd like. Okay, so now that was challenge number 4. We now have just a couple more left. Challenge number 5. Okay, now we're going to simplify our code by using a loop. And you can imagine how a loop can be very useful in this case because we have a lot of repeating code, right? So pat forward, pat right, those 2 lines are repeated 4 times. So if we're going to use a loop, this is a very good case. Okay, so using loops in Python is very, very easy. So if you were to do this in, Java, the syntax is very complicated, but here is a very simple way to do it. We're going to say for. Now, this is your for loop. Now, I is not very important in this case. So just, follow along. For I in range, parentheses. And let me explain what's going on here real quick. Range means you can decide how many times you want to loop. So there are different ways of using range. Here, we're going to use it in a very simple way, where we just simply insert how many times you want to repeat inside range. So we need to repeat the code 4 times. So we're just simply going to put range 4. Easy, right? And then after that, we're going to insert a colon. And let me tell you, colons are very, very important in Python. If you know other languages like Java, JavaScript, you'll see a lot of curly braces. And those curly braces are used to indicate code blocks. So here's a block of code, here's a block of code, and you separate those blocks using curly braces. In Python, we do that with indentations. So if you want to create a code block, meaning this chunk of code, it's grouped together to work together, that's a block. And if you want to do that, you need to use indentation. And here is how it works. So after the colon, we're going to press enter. It's going to automatically indent. So everything with that indentation belongs to that for loop that we just created, right? So here we're going to insert the lines of code that needs to repeat. And those 2 lines, I'm just going to simply select, Control-C to copy, and plop it inside my for loop like this. Oh, and the indentation is slightly off on the second one, right? We need to make sure that it's indented to indicate that it all belongs in that same group, that same code block. So in order to do this, there are 2 ways. Some people like to use spaces. Some people like to use a tab. If you watched the Silicon Valley series, there's a episode that deals with this, right? There are people dating and they get into a fight over who uses spaces versus tabs. Anyways, so make sure I use tabs. It's easier to manage for me. So I'm going to tab in front of that second repeating line. Make sure it's indented and it aligns, right? So here it is. Now I have 2 lines tucked inside of my for loop. So I just created a code block. And the rest of the repeating code, I don't need that anymore because that for loop, by repeating itself 4 times, will take care of all of this. So I'm going to remove that. And instead of having, 9, 10 lines of code, now it's simplified into 3, right? Sorry, 8 lines of code, right? 2 times 4. Now it's all tucked in here nicely. And I can easily edit this to make my square bigger or smaller just by, changing the number inside forward 1 time instead of changing it 4 times. Okay, so this is my for loop, and this I right here, you can actually use this in a lot of different ways, but in this case, for this example, we won't be using I, but it's just there because the syntax requires, inserting a variable here. And let's go ahead and run and see what this produces. Yes, the same square, right? But this time we made it so much more efficient by using a for loop. And that for loop uses this range to control how many times we should repeat. So if you had range 5, you'll be repeating these two lines of code 5 times, right? If you put 100 times, and so on. All right, so this was your challenge number 5. Any questions so far? Excuse me. Hope I'm not going too fast. Okay, now next one, we can do draw a triangle. Okay, drawing a triangle, you need to modify the code just a little bit. And I'll give you about 2 minutes to figure this out on your own. And this is going to be slightly tricky because of the angle. And I'll explain why after you give it a shot. So you can probably guess what needs to change here, right? So instead of repeating 4 times, because it's a triangle, we may have to repeat 3 times. And the length of the triangle, you could keep it the same as your rectangle, right? Or your square. And the next thing we're going to do, okay, so in order to draw our triangle, let's do this together. Instead of range 4, we need to modify this and make it into range 3, right? And then instead of turning right 90 degrees, can you guess how many degrees we need to turn? Well, let's try this out. First thought you might have is, I want to turn 60 degrees, right? And let's see if that works, because we know that the inner angle of a triangle is 60, right? Equilateral triangle will be 60. Run. And it drew something weird. Can you guess why that happened? So right here, let me pull out a pen and just draw this real quick. Okay, so Pat, when it's moving, when it's first facing forward, right? Let's say that we're right here. Let me use a different color. I'll use red. Okay, so let's say that first Pat is facing this way after moving 50 pixels, right? And here, I'm going to draw a line. And this is your 180 degree line, right? Instead of turning just 60 degrees, right, which is right here, 60 degrees, we need to make it turn 120 degrees, this much instead of 60. It's got to turn 120 in order to draw that triangle. So it's a good way to, have your students think about exterior angles, right? And what these degrees mean and how wide they are. And if you were actually, like the turtle itself, like how many degrees would you need to turn? So you're really internalizing this. Okay, so let me clear that. So instead of 60, we need 120. Run. And this time, yes, we have a triangle. It worked. So great. Let's move on. And now we're on challenge number 7, meaning that we only have 2 challenges left. Okay, so this one, let me share a link with you. So this is a link where you can actually try this out. And let me put that in the chat window. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to reverse engineer this program, this given program, by first, we're going to try it out. And then we'll try to figure out what's necessary to create this. So let me run the program. Click. And at the bottom here, console, it's asking for my name, right? What's your name? Jane. Enter. Oh, and now we just had a turtle that ran through across the screen and typed by Jane on the turtle panel instead of the console panel, right? So this would require our turtle to be able to write something on the screen. Okay, so let's go back and do that. And as you can see, it's interactive. We got information from the user, use that to produce something on the turtle screen. And in order to do this, we need to have just one more command. We haven't touched on this yet, but you could probably guess what that is, right? We're writing on the screen, so it's probably the write command. And in order to get the user input, we covered that at the very beginning at challenge number 2, right? So we already know how to do that. All we have to do is now write it out. Okay, so let me delete my for loop. Goodbye, for loop. And now we're left with the import statement on the top to use the turtle library. Next, we created the turtle object, gave it a name Pat so we can control it using its name. And next, we're going to ask the user for their name, right? And we know how to do this, right? And in order to work with that name, we'll need a variable to store that. So because we're collecting somebody's name, we'll call that variable name. And we're going to assign it a value that we collect from the user's input. And we did this by using the input command. Yes, so input, and then parentheses. Inside the parentheses in Python, very conveniently, we get to insert the prompt. And that prompt needs to be inside double quotes because it's regular text. And here I'm going to ask, what's your name? Okay, so very important thing that you want to emphasize with your students. Test your code, test your code, test your code. So test along the while you're making the project, not once, when you feel like you've completed the project, right? Once you've, typed out 3-4 lines, 5-6 lines and try to test at that point, it's going to be complicated. So you want to make sure every step works and build on that before you start typing out all your code. And I know that it's very easy and tempting to do that because you just want to dump everything out from your brain to the editor and make everything work all at once. But it usually doesn't work that way. Even for the most advanced programmers, doesn't really happen. So they can type away all they want, press run, they'll get an error. So to prevent that, let's test our code every step of the way. And I'm going to make sure that this part works. So click on run. And yep, it's asking for my name. I'm going to insert my name, but it won't do anything with it, right? Because we haven't figured out what we're going to do with that name variable at this point. So I'm going to type in Jane. Nothing happens. And that means that it's working. Okay. So our first step of collecting the user's name, check, it's working. Excuse me. And next thing we're going to do is we're going to ask Pat to write that on the turtle screen, right? Not the console window. And that command, if you want to look up what it is, you can look it up from the documentation page right here. And remember how to do that? So here are all your commands that you can use. You can just scan through and guess what that might be. You can also use the one pager that I shared with you and look it up from here. And that command is write. And here is your write, how this is used. Right now, this example shows you a fancier version where you can, control your font sizes, your font type, but we're going to keep it very simple. We're going to keep it minimum for our project. And here, we're going to tell Pat to do something, right? Hey, Pat. And then we use a dot operator to attach the command. So Pat dot, and then we're going to tell it to write. And guess what it's going to write? The name, right? So let's make sure that this part is working. And this name is collected from the user, right? Using the input command. And it's going to write the name on the screen. Let's run and see what happens. Run. What's your name? Jane. Enter. And oh, let me scoot this down a little bit. Here it is. Here's my turtle, the arrow, and my name is printed on the turtle panel. Okay, so that bit worked. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to say bye, Jane, right? We're going to say bye, Jane, and then zoom away from the screen. And we're going to do that in step-by-step manner. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to insert the word bye, right? Bye, Jane. And remember how to do this? Yep. We have to type in bye and put that in the quotation mark because it's just your regular text. It's not a variable, right? And then we're going to simply comma separate it, which is going to automatically insert a space for us. So once we do that, this is going to print by username out to the console window. Okay, run. And, oh, let me just clear this and run it one more time. What's your name? Jane. And, oh, it typed something on the screen here, right? But it's all crunched up. Well, that's not good. Oh, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. There's one thing that I totally forgot. Okay, this is something that this is a mistake that I just made. I know a lot of teachers and a lot of students make the same mistake. So let me just go over that real quick. Okay, so in the very beginning, challenge number 1, we learned how to print, right? And print and write are two very different things. So when I told you that comma separating this is a good idea, nah, it doesn't work with the write command. I'm so sorry, I forgot. So the reason why my name didn't print is because it didn't know how to handle the comma, because it's not print, it's write. So instead of using the comma, we have to use the concatenation sign, which is plus, right? Simply add your plus sign here, and this is going to do the same thing, but it's not going to automatically insert the space. So we're going to have to hard code the space in here. So instead of just saying by plus name, we're going to have to do by space, close quotation mark, and then plus name. So now this creates a space for us. It's hard coded in there. So unlike the print statement, write doesn't know how to handle comma separation. I'm so sorry about that. I totally should have caught that before I ran the program. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this one more time. Run. What's your name? Jane. And now it worked properly. It says by Jane. Now it knows how to handle this, right? And I guess this was it wasn't intended, but it's a good example of how to troubleshoot things with your students. It's okay to be wrong, right? And some students might have caught it if they, actually read through the documentation. Some students might have missed it. Well, going through these issues yourself, you get to have a big collection of all the common mistakes in your head. So I guess this was good. All right, so now challenge number 7 is done. With just, 5 minutes left, I'm just simply going to go through the next one real quick. And this is your ultimate project where we're going to use functions. Okay, and to do this, same thing. We're going to work backwards. So we're going to play the project itself first, right? The completed version. And then we're going to reverse engineer and figure out how to do this. Okay, in the chat window, I inserted the completed version of the last challenge. And I'm also going to give you the code in case we don't complete it within the next couple of minutes. I'm going to run the program and show you what it's supposed to do. And as you can see, excuse me, very kindly at the bottom panel here, it tells me all the instructions. So we're actually going to do that too. So now it says click on the black screen to start, right? Let me scoot this down just a little bit. So clicking on it will activate that panel. And then I'm going to use my arrows to control the turtle, the direction of the turtle, use space to move around. And as you can see, it leaves a line behind it. If you don't want that, there's a command for that, right? Pen up, pen down, controlled by the up arrow and the down arrow. I'm going to press up. And now if I move my turtle, doesn't leave any line behind it. If I want to start drawing the line again, down arrow to put the pen down. And there's a little neat Easter egg that I planted in this program, which is the D key. If you type in D, it's going to start dancing. Let me show you that. D. Oops. D. Did I? Okay, D. There we go. Huh. Okay. I'm sorry. Maybe I did not code that in there. Well, we're going to plant that in there now for our new program. Sorry about that. I did not code it in there. All right. So let's go back and now start coding. And we're going to remove the 2 lines that we created and only leave the import and Pat the turtle. And here we're going to use functions. So functions are, they're similar to verbs. So it lets you perform actions by calling its name. And it's a bundle of code, right? It's a couple lines of code that you bundle together, give it a name, and you call it to reuse that code over and over again whenever you need it. So in Turtle, we already use functions. Can you tell which ones those are? So remember forward, right, left, right. All those commands that we use so far, they are functions. They're functions, but they're functions created by other people. Now, the functions that we're going to work with in this last project, they're going to be created by us. We are going to now create those functions. All right. So in order to work with the screen, right, to activate it and all that, we're going to create a screen object. So let me share that with you right now. Screen is the variable that's going to hold a screen object, just like Pat. And then we're going to tell Pat to get that screen for us. Command is very easy. It's get screen. So screen, assign it a screen that Pat's going to fetch for us using this command, right? Screen equals, or assignment, pat dot get screen, parentheses. So this is going to grab the screen, and we're later going to use this variable. Next thing we're going to do is let's change the shape of our turtle to a turtle shape, a proper turtle shape. We're going to say, hey, Pat, your shape is going to be now a turtle. And we do that in double quotes. So pat.shape, double quotes, lowercase turtle. This is going to give you the turtle shape. And the types of other shapes you can find, you can look it up in the Turtle Graphics library. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to give it a color. So, hey, Pat, instead of, just, a dull color, we're just going to make it really pop by making you pink. Okay, so color is now assigned to pink. And then, because now our turtle is pink, we want to make it more visible by making the background dark, right? So this is where we tell the screen to turn black. Okay, screen dot. Now, this command is, if you're familiar with CSS, you might know this. BG color, meaning background color. Background color, black. And now this is going to set our stage. Let me run the code. Here we go. Here is our pink turtle on a black background. And I'm now going to paste in all my code just to show you what the end result looks like. And I'll explain it and share this with you. Okay, so because of time, I'm now going to share my link of the code, and it's going to show you the code itself. So you get to see the completed project, and I just plopped that in the chat window. So this is going to give you the code of this project. And it's you can go further and add more commands. And let me just show you what's here real quick. So below here, right, we know what this does here from, lines from 3 to 8. This sets the background. And below that is all the meat. So DEF is the keyword used to define functions. So if you use DEF, it means that you're defining a function. And a function needs a name. So this is called turn left. This function is called turn left. You can call it anything. You can just call it, move left or turning left. But here, I'm just going to call it turn left. And it has parentheses, which doesn't take anything. And then as you can see, there's a colon to indicate that this is going to be a code block. And inside it, we're simply going to tell what this function will do. So when you call turn left, it's going to turn Pat left 90 degrees. And we have a couple more functions, right? So we have a function called turn right, which turns Pat right 90 degrees. We have a function called move, and it's going to tell Pat to move forward 10 pixels. And here's your dance. So this dance is going to, just move your turtle around a little bit. And then we have a pen up and pen down commands. And you can, add more commands as you like. And here at the bottom, we have screen on key, right? So we have all these functions, but we need to have it be ready to respond to key inputs, right? And let me show you a little bit more here. We've got the screen turn left, but we don't have anything for turn right, pen up, pen down, move forward. We are missing all that code. And let me insert that right now. Control V. Okay, so here's the rest of the code. If you refresh your browser, you'll be able to see the rest of the code. And let me explain what's happening here. Okay, so we're going to tell the screen, hey, screen, if you detect, meaning on key, left key, right? If you detect a left key, trigger turn left or call the function turn left. And this is what's happening with the rest of the code, right? Hey, screen, on key, if you detect a right key press, then call the turn right function. If you detect spacebar press, then call the move function that we defined on the top, right? If you detect a D key press, then make the turtle dance. If you detect up arrow key press, lift your pen, right? Meaning call the pen up function. If you detect down arrow, then call the pen down function. So this is the code that will let you respond to users' key inputs. So on the top, we have the commands. At the bottom, we detect the key and we have it respond to it by calling the commands that we created on the top. And lastly, we have to have the screen listen at all times for these key presses. So that's the last line here. And this now will let you control your turtle. Run, click on the black screen to activate, and now move around your turtle using the keys. And this is good. Press D to dance, right? So it just turned around 360 degrees. This is your dance. You can make it fancier. And so try this out with your students, and we'll need to wrap up now. So just to give you the access to, the whole Kobe curriculum, what you just saw, it's all in the Intro to CS with Python course. And here is your join invite code in case you've missed it. Well, thank you so much for spending your evening with me. I hope this was helpful. Have a great rest of the night. And thank you so much for joining me tonight. All right, signing off now. Bye.